Hello, SJD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, Science of the Symbols, Part 31. And we'll be, again, sticking with alchemy and moving through. So, for instance, last few episodes especially had some timelines comparing the alchemists themselves to what the modern stuff is, and, well, impossible to connect. But the point is now, so from this last one, now what I've added in is Athanasius Kircher, which has been a constant throughout this series because it's alchemy, geometry, music, arithmetic, and astronomy. And this is some from Oedipus Egyptiacus, his old book on Egyptology, which we have, well, alchemical symbolism here, including the Uribus. And also of note is John Dee, very famous character. And we also have the Re Metallica by Georgius Agricola, and Alchemy. These are the alchemists. These are the famous guys. So John Dee, court astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I. He basically predicted the fall of the Spanish Empire and the beginning of the English Empire and their naval supremacy, which would have profound impact in the New World, for instance. But he was also an alchemist, and more importantly, okay, we also have Kircher, and not so much known as an alchemist, but the more you study him, you see it's all just repeated throughout. But back to John Dee. John Dee was a all-round wizardy sort of, at least that's the main story in regards to him. But what John Dee was, for instance, he wrote like the foreword in regards to Euclid's Elements, and even the title page. It's all there. But anyway, the sun and the moon, mathematical preface to Euclid's Elements. Again, Euclid just being this essence of geometry. So I think he was even I forget what, but he was a professor teaching geometry, teaching Euclid's geometry. All these Hermeticists, all these alchemists, all go back to the quadrivium and especially to geometry. It's just clear as day. And well, because it's it's math, it's geometry, it's not sexy enough, I suppose, but it's just it literally is a fact with all of these figures. And so where did the other stuff come from? Well, it began with the quadrivium and this all the seven liberal arts, but especially the quadrivium. Geometry is the most complete science, even like recent, but even geometry will draw the soul towards truth and create the spirit of philosophy. From the laws of geometry, from the laws of math, from the laws of chemistry, all these philosophers, these Hermeticists, these alchemists, is where they drew their system from. It did not begin with ceremony and ritual. The ceremony, so you'll often see those, like the pentagram on the floor. Well, if you can't draw a pentagram, how can you do the ritual? It begins from there, and that this is the foundation stone of Hermeticism, alchemy, and the liberal arts. But again, it's not. It's it's difficult in comparison to what a lot of word salad. But anyway. John Dee, also famous for the Monas Hieroglyphica, and that's that symbol we see here. You can see another version of it there. ID, well, Johannes, John, but it's sometimes like Johannes, but spelt with the I. So that's John. So yeah, that's John Dee. And this is the monad or the monas of John Dee. That's important because in Oedipus Egyptiacus, this Kircher, Jesuit, polymath, alchemist, astronomer, geometer, scholar, geologist. Essentially, he was also very much into geology, Mundus Subterranei. This book, with volcanoes and also, very forward-thinking geology. But this is from his book, and we have the same monad there. Now, note also the curl here, and we see a better view of what it is here on there. Oh, terra, but also we have alchemical symbols: aqua, air, ignis, the fire, water, air, and earth. But also, well, hermetic. This is we have this variation there on the caduceus. Now, even well, you might get what's going on with these four here. The zodiac around the outside. If you look at the magician card in a lot of tarot kits, you'll see this same symbol in there as well, the monad now, or monas. Now, why is this hieroglyph input? Well, we'll get to more, but okay, Kircher, that's his version. Saw it in John Dee. The Alchemical Wedding by Christian Rosenkrautz, which is said to be a pen name for someone whose middle name was Valentinus. I can't remember his exact name now, but anyway, the Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkrautz. Again, just like Basil Valentine's work or Splendor Solis, or these other alchemical works of Kunrath. This is one of the this is from where so much of the modern stuff, or the modern interpretations come from, but it's not being read as an alchemical text. It's being read as a New Age text. I know that's maybe not popular, but that's just a fact of it. So we see this same sigil hieroglyph everywhere. Now we also see in Georgius Agricola, Re Metallica, I'm not sure exact, but this important book, which is not amongst the typical alchemist collection, yet it is probably one of the most important alchemical books, which join all these people together. And this is from the frontispiece, the title page. What do we have again? We have the Mercury symbol, but we have these tails here on the end. Again, this is another example. Again, slightly different style with each one. Sometimes they're pretty much identical. But this in itself is another hint to the greater alchemical mysteries, and as opposed to other stuff. Now John Dee, that was his sigil. He was also was it his protege, but strong connection to John Winthrop Jr., who moved to the New World, to America, and took this he used the same hieroglyph as his emblem, and he had strong connections with the Inner Temple in London, the City of London. Why is that relevant? Because the Inner Temple, well, then there we have the craft guilds, the old craft, so the Apothecaries Guild, the Medicine Makers Guild, which I mentioned earlier. But what do we have? Well, alchemical symbols. Notice the helmet there. Now, the Weavers was another guild. Masons, of course, as in stonemasons. But one of the important things that happened in the City of London and within this area is every year they have what's called the Trial of the Picks, and they get a selection of coins, and a select group takes a sample of each of the minted coins and pours over them. They have to be the right size, they have to be the right weight, they have to be the right composition of metals. It's a very ceremonial but very alchemical, scientific, that still lingers with us today, and this will be an important point. So we move, okay, now back to Georgius Agricola, which translates to agriculture, which means farmer. Another name for another name. This is the Latinized name in Germany. His name would be Bauer, B-A-U-E-R, which is a common name. Basically means peasant or farmer. But you might have picked up on that. Okay, so now Stefan Mikkelsbach, again, this famous alchemist, which I've been using his work frequently. But for instance, this picture, well, what do we have down the bottom? We have an alchemical workshop, a chemist lab, with the furnaces and the distillation equipment and all the other important tools and elements of the very advanced industrial scale alchemy that was going on, as opposed to, as is often described, this sort of hokey little side art. Now, but what's really also, okay, we also have the alchemical symbols and of course the geometry. Again, the Mercury, even have essentially the monad again there with the tails going off to the side. But the important feature is mining, and this is another, you often see this in the background of Kircher's work and others, because there is no alchemy without mine, or there can be in some but most of the, especially the metallurgy, but even other sulfur or these other, they're done through mining. and they're intricately connected. Again, they cannot be separated. It's also note the pelican flask we have here, connected to Zoroaster. And oh my, what do we have there? There you go. Anyway, alchemy, it's all there. So the alchemist workshop, the mining, the geometry, and the Hermeticism, they're all Hermes, god of weights and measures. There's no alchemy, there's no geometry, translates to earth measure. But okay, so George Agricola, again on the frontispiece, and here are some couple of pictures from his book. It's a textbook. It's a weighty tome. You can get downloaded the PDF, and of course all the images available to read. And it's about 680 pages, so it's not a small little pamphlet. It is a very detailed book on mining, minerals, and metallurgy, and mineralogy is a very important one. So, for instance, the illustrations in the book, we see the furnaces and the production, the purification of the metal, because you don't just dig pure silver and gold out of the ground. It involves skill, it involves alchemy to complete the process. So, for instance, here we see, mining. It's not just surface mining. It's not just panning for gold and silver. It's a textbook which, again, he was a physician as well, and he talks about the welfare and the health of miners and the problems that go with it. They're digging deep trenches. Also, so here we see some examples of the mining equipment and what they did. Now, around about this time, Pope Sixtus V lifted a 330-ton obelisk into place using this equipment. 330 tons is bigger than those the lower level of stones at Baalbek, which is meant to be an impossible lift using primitive technology, but it's just not. It needs to die. But I digress once more. But again, this equipment, they're describing it, they understood it, and this is ancient equipment because we can find the same stuff in Rome and earlier times. Rome had pumps they were pumping the water out of coal mines, for instance. This is ancient technology, just written in a medieval book. Detection of veins. So how did they find the ore? Well, in this illustration it shows dowsing. Now, you can pause and read this because it's also by tasting the water. They're able to detect what was in the area as well. Also, the furnaces connected again. They did not have bodgy furnaces. They had good stuff. They were doing awesome levels of. So from the discovery of a mine through to the processing, through to the mining, then through to the ultimate processing and purifications of the metal. It's all there described in this book. It even shows this cupellation furnace, which separates lead from silver and gold. You don't just find lead. It's usually in minerals like galena, which is also usually mixed with gold and silver, as well as copper, bismuth, and zinc. These furnaces, the chain, this was not just some dodgy furnace. They knew what they were doing, and they were doing it on an industrial scale. Another example, some of these minerals are rather beautiful. So the alchemists, vital importance, whether it's in the military, so armor and swords through to guns and cannons, whether it was constructing the great cathedrals and all the ornamentation that went in it, whether it was apothecary, whether it was the building of navies, and most importantly, bankers. They were at the heart of power. You don't make gold and silver coins rough. It's very important. The trial of the Pyx is an ancient ceremony. They were doing this stuff. This is what the alchemists were involved in. It's the heart of power. Now, here's an interesting note. Herbert Clark Hoover, 31st President of the USA, was a geologist, and he translated into English this particular book, Georgius Agricola. And if you want to go down a rabbit hole, here's a few links. Agricola as a search word. Herbert Hoover for Curies. It's him pictured with Mary Curie, the Federal Reserve, Fort Knox, and the Jekyll Island. Now, go. Have fun. You will not be disappointed. With that, hope you enjoyed. A lot more to come in regards to this, a hell of a lot more. Cheers.